Well, hello everyone. It's Tom McDonald from the CMA and SEMA organization, and we are incredibly blessed today to have Trax as our webinar. I hope everyone is having a good week. Let me give you a little bit of background on today's webinar. I think you're really going to enjoy it. As most of you know, Trax is the leading provider of computer vision solutions and analytics for CPGers. They were a red herring top 100 global company in 2018. They help their clients leverage competitive insights through in-store execution, tools, market measurement services, and data science. I had the opportunity to work with these guys when I was at Procter. They do a top-rate job on the key things that we need in our industry to help deliver better insights from what's going on in the stores. Trax is headquartered in Singapore and has offices worldwide. We're lucky today to have two presenters. Corliss and John will be with us today. And a lot of you know Corliss from her time at Bumblebee, Hershey, Dannon, Coke, Nielsen, Philip Morris, and others, and from coming to our conference over a number of years. She's an incredibly gifted market research professional. She's got close to 20 years worth of experience. Her ability to turn data into strategic and actionable insights is best in class. She's got a wonderful personality, but don't let that deceive you. I've been at the other end of it. She won't tolerate indecision, and she's always asking me to do more things. So trust me, I'm sure she'll do that today with you. And then I'd also like to introduce John Lloyd, who will easily have the best accent on the call today, being from the UK. He's another passionate and practical strategic leader. He's got over 25 years of experience in our shopper insights, consumer market research, and analytics. He's worked for various companies like J&J, GSK, Dannon, and others. He does a ton of work now with Boots and others in the UK. And his ability to distill data into key areas and build strategies and tactics for their clients is best in class. So I think you guys are going to have a great webinar today. As always, if you have questions, please go directly into the questions box and ask them. So if you see something on the slide, you have a question, go ahead and fire away. I'll gently interrupt Corliss or John to go ahead and get you an answer. And any question you have, please feel free to throw it out there. With no further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to John and Corliss, and have a great webinar.
I thank you, Tom. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm sure John and I appreciate it as you have me over here still giggling a bit. Welcome, everyone. You have Corliss Collier and John Lloyd here, and we're going to talk to you guys about that missing link. As you guys are building your category strategies, working on your category business plans, your joint business plans with your retail partners, Trax is another data source that can help you guys get there. And for those of you who haven't had the chance to meet us, this is John and I. Of course, John is that wonderfully handsome looking guy sitting next to me, and I'm Corliss, and you can find us both on LinkedIn. And we love to talk, so reach out to us anytime. We'll be able to chat with you, talk, answer questions, anything. And without further ado, I'll start taking to our presentation. So you guys, as we all work within our categories, we know this is what we fear that our shoppers or our consumers will look like at the shelf. But from what Trax data and through our research, what we found is 4%. And what does 4% represent? 4% represents the sales revenue that is lost due to poor in-store execution. So if you put this into pictures, this is an average loss. This is not from share gains or share growth or new product introductions. This is just pure sales loss due to your shelf not being executed quite as you imagined in your plan. And so how does Trax able to help you with that? Well, if you think about when you're evaluating your category strategy and you know everything from your sales trends, your market shares, your assumptions that you've made from research, but to truly have the impact that you need on those plans, you need to have eyes in the store. And unless you're really able to morph into each store every day, all day, you can't see what's going on. And that's where Trax fills in the blanks for you. You have your distribution, you know what your company is producing based on your SAP data. And you know what you're selling based on from the data you receive from your POS partner. But what is really missing in the middle, and this is where Trax fills in for you, is what's happening on your shelf. Are the products reaching the shelf on time? How are they being merchandised? Are you getting the displays? Are your price points being executed? How are they being communicated? All those type of things and many, many, many more are the things that Trax help you to identify. So how do we do that? And why? Why is Trax another data source that is necessary to add? I know people are thinking on the call, I don't want another password. I don't want just another data source. Help me get to something that can help us drive the business. But the way Trax does that is we take what is already happening where you guys have the POS data that is coming in, whether you have partnerships with your IRI, your Nielsen's, Market 6, Retail Link, so many more out there. And you say, but what Trax fills in from the POS data is, do you know where the product was displayed that sold through on that tape? Do you know where exactly on the shelf was it located? Was it on third shelf position 6 or fourth shelf position 5? You have your shopper panel data. This was the next iteration of data that made us all very excited. You have all the basket analysis, brand loyalty measures, and all those things, but you don't know what other products were available that were competing with that, where the preferred product was visible on the shelf, how close was the adjacency, how far away from it, and how was it merchandised. And as we know, those things can drive how the sales come through and how it behaves. And then finally, if you're really, really, really into research and get excited about it like I do, you know from all your ad hoc research, you have your insights, your shop along, you have your decisions going, your missions, your trip mission studies, your loyalty studies. But you really don't know, you don't see how the shopper is behaving at the shelf in times and what is moving in and out at any time period. So how Trax helps you with that is Trax is able to take all of these three and put it together and provide you a complete picture. So it helps you finish the puzzle. It provides you with your store and SKU level execution data. So it's store level, number one, and SKU level execution data at that complete moment of truth. So where the shopper picks it up and puts it in their basket and takes it to pay for it. And then it combines with other data sources to give you those critical insights and help you to inform your strategy. So moving forward, if you think about that and you what I've just said and you put everything together, you understand that there are so many different data sources. Then you guys remember this, you're living in the matrix of data, all the different data sources. So I'm going to show you guys a small video to help you understand how it is that Trax really works and what it does. So please indulge me for a minute or so. The video is starting for you guys. Okay. So thank you for that. So now you guys have seen the video on how Trax works and how it starts. And John's going to pick up and take you through some more.
Hey Corliss, before we switch to John, first question came in, and the question is, right out of the work that you guys do in store,
Oh, wow.
where are you seeing the biggest kind of size of prize opportunity between distribution slash assortment or pricing, promotion, or kind of feature and display? Where are you seeing the biggest opportunity? And then separately, what's the easiest way? What's the easiest way to use you to correct that?
Oh wow, they went for the big question first.
Might as
So it
well.
depends on what part. May as well. You know how I am, Tom. Go big or go home. So it depends on the project. And some of the places where we're seeing the biggest impact is something that we think is so simple, and it starts with pricing. We're not seeing pricing being executed on shelf exactly as expected, when is expected. And a lagging pricing support, whether it be trade, TPR, promotion, those type of natures, or just your everyday pricing, because that's also something that Trax communicates is everyday pricing. When that's not right on shelf, that's where you're seeing the performance go down. And then second being your distribution of your core SKUs or your power SKUs. And then the easiest way to use Trax for that is through our basic, what we call metrics or your KPIs, and capturing those images, evaluating those images in near real time, as the video said, and making those changes almost instantly. And it's enabling you to have those conversations with your partners, because now it's not just talking of, well, we think because we see average pricing based on these numbers. You have images to support that, and they're not images that you captured across town or across the country. They're images that you captured in their actual location, and you can put a date and timestamp on those so that they'll know this happened on Friday at 3 o'clock. Did I cover the answer for you?
Yep, I think that's perfect. Thanks so much.
Okay, perfect. John, you want to go? And please keep the questions coming, you guys. Thank you. John?
John, do you happen to be on mute?
John, are you on mute?
Hi,
Well, we'll keep going.
thanks,
I'm not sure
Collis.
what
Hi,
happened.
everyone. Sorry,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John.
no, it's fine. I was on mute by one of the organisers, so I've managed to get myself freed. Thanks. So I'm just checking in, Collis. Thanks for the first half there. I know we need to flick back to the presentation. I don't know about anyone else, but I'm just looking at a Trax logo currently. I don't know whether that's my screen or you just need to flick across to the
That is
presentation.
everyone.
Okay, if we can get the presentation
Oh,
back up,
goodness.
that'd be
Hold
great.
on.
Thank you. It's okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm showing that it's showing.
Just while you're doing that, just for everyone else, so there may be some time delays in some of the slides I present. It's only that for simplicity, we're driving everything through Atlanta. So Collis is driving the presentation while I speak. So apologies in advance if there's any kind of delays or we're slightly out of sync.
No, I'm sorry. We're getting it back going, and we apologize, guys, for
It's
that.
okay.
Oh, that's no worry. Compared to other technical
There you
stuff
go.
that we've had, this is great. Don't worry about it.
Super.
Go
We're
ahead.
back on track. Fantastic. So yeah, I think Corliss has just teed you up with what we're here about. You just in the corporate video, which helpfully now gives you a sense of how we operate. But just to kind of ground that and just kind of remind you some of the key things to take out. Trax data really our position is about giving you eyes in the store. This is about really seeing what's happening on shelf at any particular moment in time in any particular store in any particular location. So we first of all starts with data collection. It's off a mobile phone device. So effectively anyone can use that. It's easy to use. You take the photograph. Typically a lot of our clients are using their own field sales teams, their own field reps, but alternatively you could be using merchandisers. Both of those teams can then take actions off the back of the analysis that we do. Or you could be using shoppers and consumers. We have an alternative service called Trax Crowd. Which gives you lots of advantages in terms of greater coverage through time of day, gives you greater coverage through different days of week, and it means, of course, you're not deploying field sales reps out to stores as well. Those images are captured, they're loaded up into our cloud, and we do the processing in near real time, so we digitize that image, and now what we've done is to translate all of that data into a, sorry, I've lost the screen. Now we've translated all that data into an electronic database in the same way that you would with your EPOS data, with lots of different metrics and KPIs. And then depending on how you want to engage with our data, there's kind of two mechanics back. One is in-store reporting. So as you can see on screen, we've got reports that come back to the field sales team on a mobile device to tell them about how to take corrective action. So someone asked the question earlier about how impactful is this data. Within minutes of you capturing the image and being in store, you've got a report back which tells you about your share of shelf. It tells you whether certain products are out of stock, but more importantly, it starts to give you some intelligence on compliance as to how you wanted your brands and your products presented in store. And it could, depending on what you want in your report, give you some competitive advantage over competitive activity as well. And similarly, for those of you kind of more head office and category management and shopper insights functions, what you also get is next day reporting back into head office with some more detailed dashboards where you can look at a lot more detail and start to look at things that are time trended. Excuse me. Can we just move on? So we're quite often asked by clients, how do I start to use Trax data in my organization? In particular, it's outside of the normal field sales team. So this is about how do I bring Trax data alive in my organization? How can I really drive those big decisions? So we've developed the SQUAD activation framework. It's a relatively simple model. We're going to take you through it. We're going to take you through different parts of it in detail in different bits, but this is a really, we hope, a relatively simple way of seeing how Trax data can be used in your organization and take you from pure tactical stuff around stock, which is about how does your core range perform within retail space, through to share, which is starting to understand how your products and your brands are performing with the entire category. The moment, as we'll see later, you start to combine that then with EPOS data, we move into sell, which is about now understanding kind of the cash value and being able to monetize what's physically going on in stores, where you've got those gaps on the shelf, what's that physically worth to me in cash terms, where I haven't got displays in the right place in store and I've just paid a listing fee, what's that really worth to me? And finally, shop's about taking the next step rather than just looking at how things are currently being done. This is about being able to use Trax data in combination with other data sources and start to forecast out, what if we did this? What if we start to optimize certain elements? What do we need to optimize? But more importantly, what's the cash benefit to us? And also, as Colin's mentioned, it's about working in partnership then with retail customers about what's the mutual benefit in terms of category growth as well as brand and product growth. So if we go on to the first one, which is stock. So really simplistic terms. So some clients, this is kind of where they start. And for some of those clients, they'll move around our wheel. And for some clients, this is kind of just where they want to work and stay. So in particular, if you're using a distributor model in a particular market. So this is about understanding how is my core product range performing within the retail space. So really simple questions is about compliance. Do I have the space that I want, that I've been promised to be allocated? Is that space in the right location? Do I have all the power SKUs range that I wanted ranged? It might be not just your own brand portfolio, but if you're category captain somewhere, then maybe it's about competitor products in there as well. What about availability? It's great being able to go in store, but can shoppers find my products on display? Are those displays in the aisles that I expected to find them in? And are they in the stores that I wanted to be in as well? So you get much greater depth and much greater coverage, both in the store but also in the retail landscape as well. Really powerful if you're trying to get into what you might call the more traditional trade as well. Those hard to reach kind of stores, mums and papas stores that are owned by the store owner as well. And what I wanted to do in the next slide was just to bring to life just one really simple example of how you might use this data just from a ranging point of view. So let's suppose you have got a core range. So we've got 9 products across the top here. What we can do very quickly is store by store. So at a store level on a particular day of of the week or a particular week in the year, we can look at availability of that hero range in there. So you'll see store A, for example, is a worst performing one. Of all these 9 products, then there's 5 or 6 of these that aren't even being stocked. They weren't on shelf at that particular time when we did the auditing. And we're going down. Store Z at the bottom, perfect. But can you imagine how powerful this is now? If you went from a simple binary yes no, is this product on shelf, is it available, what if you started to look at the number of facings? Now you can start to see how much space you've been allocated to these products, and you can see how that space changes by store. But if you imagine you look at this week, if I now look at the same chart next week and next month, I can start to see patterns in movement. I can start to identify some of those stores that might be repeat offenders, those stores that potentially perform really well at a category level, but maybe they're dragging my own brand performance down. So very simplistic example, just wanted to kind of give you a feel for the sorts of things you can do with such a simple data set. I think at that point, if I hand over to Corliss.
Hey, John, one quick question for you. Does the application itself that you've shown, does it have to learn what to look for on shelf over a period of time before providing relevant results?
That's a really good question. So these things don't happen overnight. So we have a huge technology stack which does the image recognition. But imagine it's a bit like having a child at school learning things. We have to teach that machine how to recognize these products. We have to teach the machine how to recognize your brand. If you took, for example, Coca-Cola, you've got 330ml bottles, you've got 250ml bottles. We have to teach the machine the differences, the subtle differences in packaging. But over time and very quickly, for sure, the machine starts to learn the nuances and the differences in the packaging, and it wouldn't take very long to get to a point where you've got a trustworthy report like this. Certainly depends on your category, depends on your market, the environment. It's not going to happen overnight, but certainly within a few weeks of initiating the service, you're getting to a point where you can start to really track performance.
Fantastic. Within a month, you'll have your performance fully tracked.
Maybe not quite as quickly as a month. It really depends on the complexity of the category. So let's suppose you only wanted to track the availability of 9 products on shelf. For sure, that would be relatively quick to turn on, and you'd probably within weeks, certainly within a month or so, be relatively comfortable with what you're getting. If you want to track a whole category of 300 individual products or more, then that's going to take a little bit longer. So there's no kind of simple rule. We normally suggest it's going to take about 6 weeks to get up to speed and be really comfortable with what's going on. But again, as a client, most people are investing in this in the long term. In the same way you wouldn't normally buy EastPOS data as a one-off and hope it's going to solve all your problems, I think you should look at the Trax data in a similar way.
Perfect. That makes perfect sense. The complexity in terms of the number of SKUs, the number of facings, etc., will always have an effect on it. Thanks.
Yeah, and the packaging as well. So hard packaging, bottles, beers, wines and spirits, coffee jars, they're relatively easy to do because the packaging is really stable. If you start going to product categories where it's a bit more squishy, chips and crisps and snacks, slightly more difficult to do, not impossible, but it takes us a little bit longer because of the subtleties in changes of packaging that you can see.
Great, thanks.
Well, thank you, John. And so I will continue to take you guys on a journey around the wheel so you can understand SQuad and how you can integrate that into your category strategy work. If you think about share is also something that is a very basic term that we look at. You want to know how your brand is impacting the overall category performance. So if you can get the category correct, you arise your brands. Is your brand driving the category performance, dragging behind how the category is growing, or the leader? So what Trax helps you do with this is we help you look at visibility. How do you benchmark in the category? Do your products stand out better versus competition? So that could be something that your brand groups, your marketing groups can use when looking at packaging. Are your branded chillers, if you're in a beverage company, or your coolers, are they pure? Do you have exactly what you expect in there? Are they labeled one thing, but there are other products in there? How are competitors using the products? Look, if you look at your competitiveness there, are there new products that are missing in your assortment? When you have your new product meetings and things go in, or things not there that should have been there, they're not reaching the store as fast. Are you getting your fair share of space? That's always one thing that comes down to it. You paid for a certain amount of space, you expected around a certain amount of space. Are you getting your fair share based on what your market share deems that you should have? And are there new segments that are emerging? This is something that's really big. Trax data is able to help you identify any new segments within your category or adjacent to your category that are emerging quite faster than maybe your traditional just your POS data. They see it as soon as it hits the shelf via an image versus waiting for it to start showing up in the sales data. So I want to take you through a small example on how we leverage that in some of these things. So if you think about the shelf and the space you're allocated and you look at this, Trax data can help you identify your shelf position. Are you bottom shelf, mid shelf, eye level, or top? Our data, when we take it in our algorithms, we create the shelves in quads, bottom, mid, eye, top, and then where you place the shelf. Do you have your subsegments present? And within each category, we know that there are segments, subsegments, and are they present and are they being merchandised as you expect within the category? Are your power SKUs there? John spoke about power SKUs or your core range. Are those there? Are they in this shelf? Are they what you expect? Are they where you expect them to be? Trax is able to help you identify that quickly. Are you getting your brand blocking and adjacency? Are you getting the brand blocks that you expect? What's sitting adjacent to your product? Is the product sitting adjacent to your competitor that you expect it to be to? Those things are all very important in your strategy and how you drive your category performance. Are you shelving a hierarchy there? Are you getting hierarchy, your shelving based on your price, usage occasion, need state? How is it being merchandised in the store, and how is that comparing to how your competitors are merchandising their space? And then finally, product availability. Are the products that we expect to be there? And not only are they there, are they out of stock? Do you have enough facings? So that is what Trax data is able to help you do when you come around the wheel to your share space. And from there, I will stop again, and we're going to continue to travel around the wheel, and John will talk to you about selling. John?
Cheers, callers. Thanks. So it's back to me again. So we're on segment 3 of the wheel. It just occurred to me, I don't want you to walk away thinking these segments are individual products and that's what you buy. What we're trying to do is just to introduce you very gently to how you can use Trax data in your organization. You can use Trax data on its own, and that's what we've tried to illustrate in stock and share. Where we're going to now with sell and latterly with shop is about how powerful our data is the moment you start to combine it with other data sources. The most obvious one of those is EPOS data, but you could be combining it with loads of other stuff as well. So this is just more of a journey just to break you into how powerful this could be. Some organizations go through this very quickly. Some organizations take a lot longer to kind of get to grips with it. It depends on how you're set up, your aversion to risk, whether you're a distributor model or not. But for sure, going back to sell, this is, as I said, this is where you've started to use our data in combination with EPOS data. Now we can start to put a monetary value on that. That is assuming that we have got access to data at store level, which I know can be a challenge in some markets for some categories, but you don't have to use EPOS data. You know, you could reuse sales out data. There's other data sources we could use, but EPOS is kind of the purest. So what does this give me? Well, from a customer management point of view, this starts to get us into the realms of, you know, what's the cash value of the amount of space I've been allocated? How hard are these products and brands working? What if I could start to optimize the product portfolio? So by looking at all this data at a store level, you can start to see there are variations in both execution and sales performance. So this starts to raise the question about, is there a causal effect? And if there is, can I start to optimize stuff? We can start to ask questions about what would a point of market share growth deliver in incremental sales if I start to change this space. Opportunity gains, I think we talked about earlier about is this about optimizing space, but it's also about where there's gaps on the shelf. You know, is that due to things like promotions being really successful and we just can't get enough stock on the shelf? Now you can start to monetize what that out of stock opportunity was to you and to your customers as well. Just to bring it to life with a really simple example of how you can bring the Trax data together with EPOS data. So this is a really simplistic example, but it's so powerful in its simplicity about what the kind of insights that you generate from this. So on this one, on the vertical, what we've got is 4 brands. It's just showing market share. What if you started to now compare your percentage market share with the percentage of share of space that you had on shelf? Now you can see there's 4 brands here where some are overperforming in terms of space allocation, and some are underperforming. So some brands, like the purple one, they've probably got more space allocated to them than they're generating in sales. And there might be good reasons for that. It could be a challenger brand coming in. It might be a new product segment coming into the market, like craft beer coming in. The green one's probably got its fair share of space, whereas blue and yellow, blue in particular, is probably slightly underspaced versus its sales contribution. Why is that? There might be good reasons for it. Maybe it's a naturally lower selling item. Maybe it's in a bigger, bulkier pack. There may be good reasons for that. So that kind of gives you a fair share of shelf, which is kind of a metric that Corliss and I have brought in. Imagine how powerful this is if you start to then trend share of shelf over time. How great would it be to be able to compare the amount of space you've got on shelf with the sales performance that you're generating in the market and for particular retailers? This is a really simplistic and obviously made up example. What it's meant to show, or trying to show, of course, is these things can change over time, and there could be reasons, good reasons. So for example, it could be in the middle of this chart, there's been a range review that's gone on, and the purple brand and the blue brand have been rebalanced. Obviously one was completely overspaced and one was completely underspaced, and the retailer, for good reasons, has decided to rebalance that space. But what you're seeing then is, even after that range review, at some moment in time, those brands are still changing their performance, and their kind of sales contribution is still slightly out of kilt with the space that they've been allocated. So really simplistic example, but hopefully can start to see how powerful understanding shelf execution can be in terms of contextualizing your own EPOS data. Starts to help you really change the dynamic in the conversation that you'd have with retail partners as well, about what does good execution look like, and what's really driving that performance. So I'll hand over to Collis.
Hey, John, there were a couple quick questions. When you're talking about fair share of shelf here, can you look at it either by facings or linear space, or what are the objects you can look at it by?
No, that's a really good question, and I know Corliss and I have wrestled with this. There is no simple answer. It's very much dependent on how you as a client business would run your business. So within the Trax data set, you always have the choice of how we measure shelf space. So one of those measures of share of shelf is physically based on faces. Of course, that kind of assumes that all products are a similar size, but effectively that tells you your percentage based on the number of products that are on shelf. Alternatively, we can provide you a metric as well, which is based on physical lineage, so the number of centimeters or millimeters of linear space that you occupy within a category. And so you can have both. Similarly, with the market share, you may choose it's most appropriate to use volume sales or volume equivalent for your definition of market share. For some of our clients, they would rather use unit share. So it's important to kind of get those two metrics done. Some clients are very revenue driven, so they would use value market share. So it's down to you. The beauty of Trax data, I think, is that whilst we tried to make it affordable with a lot of off-the-shelf metrics, how you buy into the service, how the category is defined, it is down to you. You're not having to work with our definitions. This is something that's purely tailored to you and your needs. Obviously, that throws up some interesting challenges when we work with clients in multiple markets, where you want to be able to get that meta-analysis done between markets. But hopefully that answers that question.
Yep, that does. And then the next question was, which part of the SQ, the squad, impacts the most in helping to lower that 4% lost sales volume attributed to poor shelf execution?
That's a really good question, and we're going to come on to it. So
you can save that for later if you want.
Yeah, we will. One of the biggest returns we've got is is kind of stock and share. But what you'll see is in sell and shop, what we do is to suddenly lift the lid on. Is it really 4%? What could it be?
Perfect. And then the next question is, for a manufacturer, can we see the data for competitor products within the within the category? For example, facings for competitor products versus their brand.
Oh, that's a good question. Sorry, we should have addressed that one up front. Yes. So, unlike some of the EPOS data you may get from your from retailers, yes, this is your definition. So you've got total transparency of everything on that shelf, whether it be your products, whether it be your competitors. So as part of our discovery process, we would agree with you what it is you want recognized. So the more SKUs we've got to recognize, the cost goes up a little bit. It takes us a bit longer to do, takes a bit longer to embed the system because of the training, but it's down to you. On that point, I think where this starts to become really powerful is when you're trying to understand the role of private label and retailer own brand in the marketplace as well. So most of your EPOS data providers will probably aggregate retailer own brand into one big lump for a variety of reasons. The beauty of this data set is we can dissect that private label down to individual SKUs and individual products. We can break it down into individual power brands that the retailer may have. So a lot of retailers may have a value line, they may have a premium line, they may have a kind of real challenger to the market leader. The Trax data allows you to see that and really understand it. You can see new brands and new products come into the market as they come in. The other thing it gives you is because of the speed of delivery, we can be giving you a dashboard report back into your offices within the next day, so within 24 hours of taking the image. That means you've now got visibility of competitor activity, new market entrants, category rate definitions. You've got visibility of that, something like 4 to 5 weeks ahead of your EPOS data coming to the business. How powerful is that? When you're category captain or when you're a challenger brand, how powerful is that to you to be able to start thinking about your next move 4 weeks sooner than you can today? Corliss, I don't know whether you wanted to add anything to that.
Oh, I think that's a great
No,
answer.
you took the last point, or you took that away from me. I think we've shown.
And then Corliss, as you get started, how do you guys evaluate image recognition accuracy? And how often do you ensure it's most up to date? I'm sure that's almost on a weekly basis.
Yeah, no, it's not even weekly. We have several engines running, and we evaluate accuracy constantly. That is something constantly. It's a learning process. So within our technology, the platform, there's a computer learning process. So accuracy is constantly being evaluated for each project as it is going on. And we consider projects as each client itself, that's a project. So your accuracy is constantly being evaluated. Products are constantly being updated. We're constantly doing brand search, what we call it, and hunting, brand hunting, looking for those products out there to make sure that we are evaluating them correct. Are we getting the 750 milliliter bottle correct, or are we just getting the 20 ounce? Just all those different things. We're constantly working on that, making sure that we are accurate and we are returning you accurate information. It is a learning process, very much how John said. It's, if you're constantly doing it, you get better every time you come around.
Perfect, thanks.
I don't know, did you have any more questions, Tom?
Yeah, one last one just came in.
So we'll keep going.
Hey, sorry, Carlos, one more came in. Who provides the images?
No. What images are you talking about? Whoever asked that question, could you guys be more specific to Tom? Because I don't want to give you the 40-page answer when you only asked the short answer question to that. But I'll start with the short, if that person wants to type and then respond to Tom there. The images are captured, if you remember, John showed you, and in the video, either with our small cameras on shelf or right within your handheld with your mobile phones or your tablets. Those are actual physical images that are taken in the store. And for training purposes, we have access to the same sources that you guys have out there, the image libraries and data to train and teach, what the products look like. But the images are actually coming in. They're being taken as a photo with, in your camera on your phone. And Tom, just let me know when that person clarifies that if I didn't answer, because there is more to that if they want.
Okay, perfect.
And waiting for that.
Go ahead.
Well, and waiting for that, I'll continue to take you guys around the journey, take you through the journey, and how you can leverage your Trax data in building your category strategy. is when you go to look at how we do with shop. So when you think about your project, you've gone through your sort, your share, your sell, and now you want to, how are people shopping? How are they really engaging with your brands in the category? So how do you bring those shoppers, your category shoppers, through the category excellence? So within your brands, you have what you call your look of success, your picture of success, your any acronyms that many companies come in, and in Trax we call it just execution excellence. How does that translate over for what the customer sees who are already shopping the category, or potentially those that you're trying to bring to the category? And what Trax data helps you do here is with your merchandising optimization. How can your merchandising execution drive increased sales? If you move the products from bottom shelf to mid shelf, eye level, is it necessary to have slotting fees on eye level versus being on the top shelf? How will that sales velocity work per square foot? How can we inform and enhance category shoppability? Are you looking at your market structure study, your CDT? Are you working with planograms? How do you bring the ease of shopping to your category? And then how do you look at execution excellence? How do you take and deconstruct the key drivers? So when you take and develop your picture of success, your look of success, your ideal store, and you have your 8 to 10 drivers, how do you figure out which drivers drive and unlock category growth? We like to say that, well, all 8 of them, that's why we did the research, so all 8 of them impacted. Trax is able to help you start to hone in and say, well, of the 8, if you're in this segment of store, maybe number 1 and number 5 will really drive growth here. So it helps you when you're having your people execute out in the marketplace, be able to say, if you only have time to pull 3 levers, or if your brand group, your trade group only has an opportunity to pull 1 or 2 levers, make sure you pull this one first, because this will drive the greatest growth versus trying to fix all 8 or pull the wrong 2. So Trax data is able to help you with that. So I'm going to take you through some very, very mass case studies and examples of some work like that we've done. So if you think about merchandising optimization, so you want to look and maximize your sales velocities for your shelf space. So you think about elastic products, those products that you have where if you put more of it out there, you'll sell more. You put more beverage out there, you'll sell more beverage. More cookies out there, you'll sell more cookies. Versus your inelastic products, no matter how much more space you give these products in the store or on the shelf, you're not going to sell too many more of those products. People don't need more, say, light bulbs, and I'm sorry if I have a light bulb company out there. They don't need more light bulbs in their house or their office can physically hold. You don't really buy those and save those for a rainy day. But if you have more, say, cookies, you bring more cookies in your home, I know exactly, especially in my home, they disappear quicker. So you're going to eat more. So you put more out there, they move more. So you look at a case study with there, and that's one. And then another case study is if any of you guys, first you work in your category management departments, have ever had your sales team come back and say to you, well, we have new items for our new item meeting with our retail partners, and they're telling us it was a one in, one out situation. Well, there is work that Trax has been able to do, and we've done where we've been able to help identify, instead of making brand level decisions, we help you make category level decisions. So now you take and you change the conversation that you're having with that retailer. So sometimes that is a very hard thing to say, well, you take out our lowest performing brand when even your lowest performing brand could have still been a high performer for the category. So what Trax did for this in this case, where we helped to identify the SKUs that were below that inflection point, and the inflection point was based on elasticity. And then from there, we identified the SKUs that were above the inflection point. So those that no matter how much more we put out there, they were just not really paying the rent. You weren't selling anymore. People didn't need more of that product just because there was more available. And then we were able to reallocate the total shelf space, still keeping the shelf still in their same parameters, the same net SKU count. So the net SKU count, excuse me. So with that, you had a 22% space reallocation. So you did, in effect, do what your retailer asked you to do. It was a one in, one out situation, but now you took the thought broader and you were able to put numbers behind it and show that from images and combining that with POS data that, yes, we heard you. You only want one in, one out, but maybe they're not all within my brand. Let's take a broader look at the category. And then by bringing in the POS data and your Trax and your actual image data of their stores, this is now an unbiased conversation versus being pushback that maybe you're only trying to provide and save your brands. So with the 22% space reallocation, you got a net $38 million opportunity total for this chain and for the year. But let's be honest here. The opportunity gained by reallocating the space is about a $61 million. price. But then another thing is, if the products were there, although they were over space, they did eventually sell and they did contribute to the bottom line. So there was a deallocation cost of about 23 million. And so that's when you get with your net. You take what you had, your opportunity for your net, and you came to a 38 million. And this is one of those when you can change the conversation, then you can't, and where people can't really compete, can't really push back and say you're only saving your brand. You're really trying to help them have a category conversation and help the category perform better. And then of course, when the category performs better as part of your strategy, your brands will drive that performance. And moving to another case study here. We talk about merchandising optimization. So everybody wants their products to go at eye level, but is it really necessary for some products to always go at eye level? So by combining with some of your POS data, you look at your baseline sales for the store, whether if you remember we showed you, we look at bottom, we break up our shelves into bottom, mid, eye level, and top. And we look at how your average velocities are for the store. Then we look at them for each position place. And then the impacts, and we look at how they have the impact on moving them vertically within the shelf with the images and combining that with POS data and testing it. Also compared to moving them horizontally on the shelf. So do you want to be on eye level position 3 on the shelf or top position 1? So we're able to help you look at that and decide when you're looking for placement, where you're working, if you're category captain and you're working on planograms, or even if you're an advisor or you're a challenger and you're looking to challenge space and where you're being placed within the category. And then next, when you look at another case study we have is a potential sales uplift by optimizing that mid-eye level position. You use the best fit approach when SKUs and then they perform at eye level position, and you follow it by mid and top and bottom level. So you're taking things and you say, okay, everything is at eye level is a 1, but then you want to see how they perform. And with Trax data, we're able to move that around and work with our algorithms. And with this case, we were able to see just by moving the SKUs within the shelving positions on the store, we got about a 25% increase in performance and in sales and volume sales for that customer.
Corliss?
And then I will turn it back over to. Oh, yes, Tom.
A couple quick questions for you. The first one, when you guys are talking overspaced, you're referring to being overfaced, correct?
Well, it depends where you are on the wheel. So if you're using it with just the Trax data alone, yes, we're talking about overface. However, when we work it with our modeling systems and we put it along with your sell-in data or your sell-out data, so your POS data or your selling data, that's when we start talking about being truly overspaced the sales.
Fantastic. And the next one is, hey, with your current, do you find that sometimes the average linear feet is spot on? Can it be misrepresented either up or down?
Tom, you went out in the first part of the question. Can you re-ask it?
Yeah, sure. With your kind of current pixel methodology, from an accuracy standpoint, do you see that it's spot on, or sometimes you are under or over representing based on using the pixel technology?
So our technology is not full pixel technology, and we find that we are within statistical variances. We are spot on in our analysis.
Fantastic. And then back to one of that first questions, as you think about the one that we started off this section with, which was regarding the images. Do you guys have your own internal image department, or does the supplier customer provide and help maintain those?
We have our own.
Perfect. Fantastic. All right, keep going. Thank you.
This is great. John, over to you.
Thanks, Corliss. So I know we've hit you with an awful lot. What Corliss and I have tried to show you is just the diversity of these types of things you can unlock and bring into your business using Trax data. Some of it's relatively simple, and in the last few minutes you've seen stuff that's a lot more complicated and requires some kind of specialist data analytics in there. So on the homeward straight now, this is the last bit, and the last couple of examples Corliss showed you was looking at individual screwdrivers, individual levers in there, which was about understanding, you know, what's the effect of space allocation? If I increase the number of facings, does that make a difference? What if I took facings away rather than doing a one in, one out approach? What does that give me? We've looked at shelf position. So they're individual metrics. But imagine, as we look at this, we talked earlier about, you know, six KPIs, 6 metrics you could start to look at. What if we started to understand what's their cumulative effects? Which ones of these are the most important? So a lot of you, or some of you on this call, may already have a perfect store or a picture of success type initiative in the business. Some of you may be thinking about putting it into place. But, you know, from a perfect store point of view, one of the big questions we're asking is, where do you need to have a perfect store to drive compliance and drive sales? What elements, the big question is, which elements of perfect store or picture of success really drive sales performance? You know, there's an intuitive feeling that a lot of the stuff we do from a merchandising point of view may not deliver the sales revenue, but we're not quite sure which bits are the most productive. You know, big questions about which drivers do we have to pull and leverage to get to the right stores. And the big question is, even if I know all of that, it's great to know this great analytics, it's great to know all this sensitivity, but at the end of the day, I need to turn it to sales. How does merchandising teams and sales teams? Very quick, give you a very, very simple example of some really big level analytics and how it drives a big strategic program. So we've worked with some clients, and essentially I think there's a recognition it's really difficult to understand which stores are going to perform well. It's too simplistic to say, well, this particular retailer, a perfect store works in a particular way. This type of store format is not that clear cut, you know, even geographical location. So we've done some work where we've just taken a whole bunch of stores and we've kind of done some clever clustering and segmented those stores and produced 5 different stores. We looked at each of the different KPIs that sat within that perfect store. So that's things like amount of space that a brand's being given. It might be about shelf position. It might be about adjacency to a competitor brand. It might be physical space that you're being given. We looked at all of those things and did some advanced analytics to see whether there was any correlation at all between the KPIs and what was driving sales. And what we wanted to do is to highlight, you know, from a merchandising point of view, from you know, which of these things do we need to focus on the most, rather than trying to do everything in store. And we did find that you can segment this out and you can find a very quick checklist that you can tailor by store. So various KPIs, they've all dropped out into different clusters. We've clustered stores. In this example, we found that cluster 3, that was about half the stores in the survey. We identified that there's a few KPIs, a few merchandising principles that really drove sales that could be clearly attributed to sales. In this example, we found that vertical blocking and shelf organization were some of the more important attributes to look at. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that you could probably disregard and forget about, and it wasn't going to make a massive difference in this type of store environment. Then there was 3 other store clusters that came up, and that's another 40% of the total store universe. Some differences in those store types, those different clusters, but generally they showed some similarities in terms of shelf flow and on-shelf availability were more significant. Now, can't get into the details of what those were, but I suspect these different clusters were probably heavily linked to different shopper missions and different kind of trade channels in there. So you're starting to bring shopper decision trees into the mix now, and understanding what levers are most important in particular stores. And then the third cluster, for the purposes of this study, it was such a small segment, and given the fact that you can only do so much with your merchandising teams, that was ignored. But I think this was a really interesting study to show that, you know, whilst a lot of work goes on in terms of what does good look like in store, you know, what does perfect store look like, it's also recognizing that not everything has the same kind of sales impact in every type of store. And this was really powerful for that client to kind of start to understand how they prioritize the workload. And I think that's probably it for much. All right, Corliss?
Perfect.
a bit of a time delay.
Perfect.
Yes,
You
I'm
guys
sorry.
ready for another
You're
question?
sending it. Yes, of course.
Yeah, that was it. So thank you very much for your time.
Perfect. Are you guys ready for another question? The question came,
Of course.
besides the people who are in our shopper insights group and our category management group, what other businesses have you guys seen utilizing these insights to drive strategies and tactics?
So it's a really good question.
I'm sorry,
So there's
I think I may
various
have
teams across. Go on,
go ahead,
Corliss.
John.
No, you carry on. Go on.
I think I may have a bit of a delay. So you're asking what other teams. So we're seeing various teams use it. So other than category management, shopper insights, you also see many of the sales departments using this. Your trade marketing, your trade teams using this data. Your brand teams are also leveraging the Trax data. And many more. There's many ways that this opportunity. And then of course, supply chain is another group that's able to use it. And John, do you want to add anyone that I may have missed?
No, I think you covered most of it. I mean, sales execution is a big audience for us, as you can imagine, in those early stages, in those first stages about retail execution. So I think the only other one I would call out is brand teams are really keen to use this. And I think the other thing then, it's about understanding that this data is really powerful within a particular market. And also some of our clients are starting to now use this data above market, look at meta-analysis. You know, when you're rolling out power brands and merchandising principles across markets, it's trying to understand what works in some markets and whether you can lift those learnings and drop them into another.
All right, fantastic. If there's any, it doesn't look like we have any last questions, so I'm going to turn it back, Corliss, for you, just to any last comments you guys have before we end the webinar.
No, we hope that you guys see how by adding another data source in your strategy planning, your business planning, that how this fills in kind of that missing void. And this is an area where John and I feel very passionate about, because having sat in those seats in previous roles, we know if only you could see how things are really happening in store quicker, sooner, you'll make more thorough decisions. So if you have any questions at all, you want to know more, ask questions, pick John and I's brain, you can always find us. Our contact information here is on the bottom of this slide, as well as you can find us here on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. We thank everyone for all of the questions today. If you need to reach out and have other questions answered, you've got Corliss's and John's details on the page. You can always reach out to us also at the CMA and SEMA, and we'll get you in contact with them. Corliss and John, on behalf of the CMA and SEMA, I want to thank you for today. Just an outstanding job. We appreciate everyone's time, and hopefully some people will be back on tomorrow for our Friday webinar. Thanks, and have a great day.
Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful day.
No, thanks everyone.